Hi, Polly here, and yes, we do need drink today. Well, what can I say? I warned you people and you weren't good. I told you I'd shoot and you didn't believe me. Why didn't you believe me? Alright, so you get Arduin Grimoire. Oh dear. Okay, so look. So I am essentially pretty much a historian of the role-playing genre. I've been here for the whole ride. Weirdly enough, Arduin Grimoire is something that did not really make it to Australia back in the days when it first came out. So brief potted history for everyone. As Dungeons and Dragons came out in the 70s, a chap, Dave Hargrave, made his own game, Arduin. Now, rather, Arduin's actually the world. He did these Arduin Grimoires, which were notes on his version of the game. It caused all sort of arguments with Gygax, and we won't go into any of that. However, this was a piece of work that obviously meant an awful lot to a lot of people in that kind of West Coast gaming area over in the USA, and has remained legendary ever since. It remains legendary partly because of the character of the guy that wrote it, partly because of the crazy, crazy world, and partly for just all the wonderful screw-ups in the actual rules themselves. But it does deserve looking at as such, as a chunk of our history, and it does have merits as a game. So this has been preserved. There's a group who are bringing this out. I'll put all the links down here. So this is a hard copy reprint of the original Arduin Grimoire books and Arduin Adventure and so on. Comes out from the Emperor's Choice. They have preserved all the Arduin stuff. Now, there is a second version which was a later development from these, and it's the Complete Arduin. Way more of a game. I have to say, this is not a role-playing game, period. This is a series of nail-ons for someone that's already playing original D&D. It presumed that you had those books. It never says it. It keeps shaking its fist and saying this is a complete game. No, it doesn't do any of the stuff that actually provides that framework. It's someone's add-ons. Complete Arduin 2, that is its own game. It's got its character generation system, and it's all in there. Now, there is another version that they've done, which is Arduin Eternal, which is a more modern game design, and it completely sort of departs from the D&D roots of the whole thing, sets itself up, and they support that. However, we are going to look at the original Arduin trilogy. So some of my watchers may even recognize this as their own artwork. Look, this was a piece of work that was created with a huge amount of energy and a huge amount of, I guess, love for the genre. And I don't want to make enemies here, but it's a crazy piece of work. It's the piece of work done by someone who's hyperactively, passionately engaged in their game and has a real bone to pick with the people who've done the original one. And as such, the level of writing in these original books kind of reminds you of something that's been banged out on a manual typewriter in a wooden shack somewhere out in the forest. It's full of angry rhetoric and fist shaking about those people who play the games, and we play this in the proper way. I mean, not joking. We've got, and it makes very, very little straight sense. You kind of have to wander through this text, and it's colourful, but so for instance, the new character hit point system. Up till now, there has been absolutely no satisfactory system for designing the hit points for characters. In Arduin, we've designed a way that we think will work not only as a game system, but fairly for all characters. And then you get this thing, each character will get 1 point per constitution point that they have, okay? Plus a base amount of points according to their type. See the chart. We have a chart, and this chart is races. You get this for cavemen, this for centaurs, this for dancers, this for dwarves, etc. Alright, so we had that in. All clerics, druids, medicine men, rune men, singers, diddly-diddly-dee, get 1 hit point added to their total for each 2 levels of experience they acquire. Mages, illusionists, saints, psychists, or courtesans get 1 hit point for each 3 levels. Star-powered mages never get anything for experience levels. This is due to their attunement to the star crystals. Then in another thing, we've got warriors and other types get +5 additional base points. But then we've got characters now receive +1 hit points per constitution point they have over 12. There's a character with 18, we get +6 additional points. So it's like, it kind of, over the course of pages, you have to wander through and try, yeah, but I'm doing a starting character, mate. How do I find my constitution? How do I find my overall hit points? It's not mentioned. So it's kind of notes assembled kind of as they flowed off this guy's brain. This is done in 1977. I can accept that. And there are good notes that have flowed off this guy's brain. He needed an editor, and that's kind of part of the fun. I guess it was someone's rant. Now, this guy's bone that he had to pick was the fact that D&D had established itself entirely as a Tolkien-esque fantasy, and he felt that fantasy gaming could be a lot more, which it can. So, win. And as such, he wanted to do a game that had way more available in terms of character races and way more available in terms of classes and so on. And it's kind of interesting to see that this guy's work was pretty clearly raided by later editions of Dungeons and Dragons and not credited. A lot of character classes and so on that I have seen in canon for subsequent D&D things come from this guy's work, and this is early. This is way earlier than like 2nd edition and so on, so people are lifting these and putting them in. But can't really complain because, in the days before open content, this guy was just treating D&D as open content. So look, Arjun, what he's got is a wonderful series of character races. Now, there's some colourful stuff that makes this world its own, and this is where the loves come from. So Frents, I love them. An insectoid race, kind of part ant, kind of part grasshopper. They live in hives and groups. They've got different coloured chitin depending on what their role is and so on. You can take these guys. They tend to have like spears and two-handed swords, and they've got this kind of grasshoppery style where they tend to jump in the air to get over things to attack, and they kind of throw a spear down at people as they leap over. And then they're behind the battle line and draw these swords and go raging in. Dance, lifted from Jack Vance, which are kind of a strange jet black kind of part vampiric-y, part carnivorous sort of race and so on. There are many things that are just interestingly crazy. There's like kobold hobbit hybrids. There's ogres, but you can be centaurs, you can be Amazons, you can be cavemen. What else has he got in here? It's a beautifully done thing. He must have 50 odd things you can choose from. Goblins and hobgoblins and dwarves and all these sorts of things, which is great. And then we get into sort of the characters, and again, he presumes knowledge of D&D, so he presumes that all the basic D&D classes are there. These are add-on classes. So we've got lots of different variants on magicians. We've got sort of ones that use star crystals embedded in them that draw on cosmic power. He's got psychics that kind of can tell the future. He's got psionics. He's got lots of different kind of martial artists, and he's got assassins, and he's got thieves, and he's got druids, and he's got hundreds of things to choose through. You can just comb through. So obviously these people wanted a lot more from their game. It's filled with crazy charts. Like this document is just solid charts. Half of it is stuff for like determining character height, determining character weight, random charts for figuring out what your hair color is, what your skin color is. If you've got what your charisma is, you can go through all these charts to roll distinguishing features and so on. That lovely kind of random chart thing, it's so old school. And nobody needs it, but what the hell. Female attributes chart, what your measurements are. God help us, this was the 70s, and no one minds a Amazon wandering around in a fur bikini. What I like, he's got these random charts for background for player characters. So each, depending on your class, and you roll on these huge percentile charts, and it'll get you something. no two warriors are going to be the same. They'll all have something. You get a bonus on this sort of weapon. You're scared of thunderstorms. You change into some sort of creature under these circumstances. You're a religious fanatic. He's got random charts to kind of bring more and more colour into things. Mages, illusionists, druids, alchemists. But one of the weird things is that a lot of this is vague. So you get a character class like alchemist, and just say alchemists, they never wear armour and they can only use daggers and so on. And their big shtick is that they can make all kinds of potions. Here's a list of what they could do. Oh, they could make smoke powder, stink bombs. They could make all kind of different filters and things. So they could probably make gunpowder. They could probably make explosives. They could make thermite. Umpires will just have to decide what they can do and how much of it they can make. So it's like pretty vague, you know. It's like it's not restricted as to what their level and so on is, and the umpire's going to have to decide what they can make and what effects that's going to have in the game, you know. So nice idea, you know, could cause problems for an umpire that's not from this guy's world. If you're in this guy's games group, obviously you had a baseline established of how everything worked in his world. You were going to have to figure this one out for yourself. So I have to say, look, none of these classes and races are play balanced. Okay, they're just like crazy ideas that have come tumbling out of this guy's head, and some of them are way butcher than others. So, like the Deodants, which are kind of part demon, part vampire, and so on. Yeah, they're butch and they've got all these powers, and that doesn't stack up against, you know, Joe the Elf very well. And in a modern game, they would go through huge, torturous things of points and selections to make sure that everything's steady. I mean, hats off to this guy. I think his umpiring style was pretty similar to mine in that if someone's gone through and they're a power player and they've like cherry-picked through and they've tried to find the thing with the most bonuses and the hugest powers and so on, I think he let them. And I came from game groups that had some real, you know, power gamers in it. We were always doing this, and the secret is that just they're the ones that all the terrible things happen to, because they're so overpowered compared to everyone else. You know, if you're lying in wait as an ambusher and you've got your crossbow loaded, and coming down the road comes a couple of perfectly ordinary guys, but one of them's bright blue, has 4 arms, each of which have got glowing swords in it. It's like, well, who am I going to shoot? Yeah, that guy. And I think that's how he ran. It's like, no, you can take the overpowered character. You just have to accept the fact that, you know, a lot of the trouble's coming your way. And some of these character classes that he's done are entirely non-combative, which I found kind of interesting, because, you know, a lot of this is killy bashy hurting. You know, I want martial arts, I want, you know, incredible powers, I want swords, but it's also got some that are courtesans and other ones that are designed for political playing. So, you know, there was obviously a lot of social and political playing in there as well. So, old school play at its best. Don't bother litigating it, just let the play style handle it. So look, why would you get hold of this? It's got some great ideas. There's like techno classes. He wanted his fantasy world to be a fantasy world in a place where there are actually galactic empires and things out there, and you'll get crashed starships and so on. So you can get a layer of technology mingled in with the usual magic. You know, this is getting into Star Wars days and so on, and this guy has come from a background of traditional kind of science fiction adventure books from the time, so vibro swords and monomolecular swords, and, you know, as Star Wars obviously comes out, whee, laser swords and so on are a thing, and they're all in here as potential weapons that you can take. There's a techno class that specializes in using these kinds of things, so it's a fantasy world that's got science fiction, traditional sort of 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s science fiction tropes all mingled through it, as well as, you know, the crazy fantasy magic. There are details here that no one will ever need. I honestly hand to the godfish doubt that anybody ever actually played this game, because there are so many charts and tables and extra bits. I think it was designed for you to cherry pick whatever worked for your game. There are hundreds of pages of weapons and Greyhawk had obviously come out, and it's got bonuses for different weapons for different armor classes and what damage they do against man-sized opponents versus giant opponents. Oh, no, 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 no. This guy's going to have 5 times as many charts, and he's going to split the sizes up into a dozen different size groups, and your weapon's going to have different damage against each and every one. So it's like, does anyone need that? Did anyone use it? Probably someone did, but I doubt everyone did. But again, like I said, it wasn't designed for that. What is kind of nice about this system, though, is that I think you can use it for what it was originally designed for. This can be something that you use to mutate your regular Dungeons and Dragons into something completely different, completely surprising. Your players will have way more choices of character and way more choices of races and so on. You don't even have to use the Arduin setting. So the company that brings this out, they also bring out all these gazetteers of the actual world of Arduin. There's maps, there's regional guidebooks for this guy's fancy world, and this fancy world was obviously loved. So it's all there, it's all preserved, you can play in it. But you could just turn your normal game into something pretty crazy by leaping straight in and grabbing hold of these books and putting in these monsters and putting in these character classes and so on. Now, monsters. So, there's some crap. Octorillas, I love it. Gorilla with a beak with tentacles. But one of my favourites. Now, I'm just going to switch up here. This is Arduin Eternal. Yeah, I've got all the different versions. I told you I was a historian of this stuff. So, Arduin Eternal has bigger, flashier artwork. But, yeah. The sky shark is one of my favourite creatures of all time. It's a flying shark filled with hydrogen. However, they can explode. So if you hit them like a lightning bolt or something that gives off a bang and a flash, like magic missiles or flame arrows, they explode. But there are these kind of plate armoured goblins that, you know, fly these things around. And this is part of the thing. If you switch your D&D to using these things, all these monsters, all these classes, you suddenly get a world where the encounters and the things that you run into, they're all going to be different. You're going to be surprising players and they're going to be having a very different experience. So I kind of recommend it. There is now these, in this original volume here, the things are expressed in terms of D&D monsters as you would have had in the original monster manual. So number of hit dice, armor class and so on, they're exactly Dungeons and Dragons. Right down to, and this is famous, in the original Dungeons and Dragons books, there was a typo. Percentage chance in liar. They meant to say in lair, but, you know, they had no editor, so in went the typo. This guy copied that as well. So all of these things have got percent liar. However, in this case, he's decided that must have meant a percentage chance that the creature will lie to you. So every amorphous blob, every flying shark, every carnivorous plant, every goblin has a percentage chance that it might be lying to you. All right. But these crazy, crazy, wonderful things. Yeah, undead ghost crab things. You've got tons of demons. You've got these wonderful hooked horrors and scorpiony beasts. You've got wonderful frogs with wings. You've got strange carnivorous beasties. Some of these things have become kind of quite colourfully famous, and they really deserve to be preserved. There's tons and tons of monsters and creatures here. Now, some of these are out and out party killers. Some of these are just damn good fun, like the flying frogs, like the kobold hobbit variants. There's other stuff that kind of I'm not sure any game needs this, but like a Medusa vampire hybrid. Yes, it can touch you and suck your blood and suck your levels out with its claws. It can bite you and suck your blood out and remove levels, or it can turn you to stone by looking at you. It's like so there's a certain amount of like, I'm going to kill the party there. There are a ton of spells here that can be, again, they were clearly designed to be attached onto the normal flow of spells. Some of them are very useful today. And there's weird little charts in here that weren't things that you had in the original game. Ways for determining weather. Ways for determining who you meet in inns. And character resurrection charts for, like, you know, what happens if you've had to drag the body around for a while, does anything go wrong? So, alright, so let's say you wanted to take the trip and bring this into D&D. If you're playing old school D&D, obviously this original book, or this reprint of the original books, that will work because everything's expressed in D&D terms. You can just lift those things and put them straight into normal D&D. You'll probably want to ignore everything except the character classes, the magic, the monsters. And obviously the character races, because they're part of the flavour of the whole thing. But what you can do is get the complete Arduin. It's got more illustrations in it, and it's got its own game system if you wanted to kind of adapt that in. Now, Arduin Eternal, this is the bestiary from it. There is like a big game system. Alright, so they have abandoned D&D for that, and they've made it into a D100 based combat system, and it's a little bit complex, I have to say. It's got 1990s disease, where the level of crazy detail you saw in there is kind of still in it. All these charts for determining all these different things, and the combat system and so on might be a little bit too detailed, you know, but a playable game in its own. They are also working on a new version, which I would like to see. However, the bestiary here is well illustrated. The problem with this original document is that this is the original books as they came out. As this guy had his wonderful, crazy, out there ideas, he would do a volume of this grimoire, but it would have some stuff on classes and some stuff on magic and some stuff on monsters, and kind of that's how this is preserved. So monsters will be split up into 3 or 4 sections in this. You have to wander. For this, of course, you know, they've done an overall bestiary which has got all its sections. However, because it's for its own system, you can't kind of just jerk these things out and put them straight into another game system without any work at all. You're going to have to look at it and just figure, oh, all right, you know, here's this strange kind of moth thing. What does it do? All right, well, it's, in my terms, I'm going to give it this armor class, this many hit dice or hit points and so on. Yeah, easy enough. So it's a mineable resource for your own games. And again, I think the original designer would not be displeased with that. That's what he was trying to do. So, Arduin, well, it's crazy. Look, it's full of energy and rants and stamping your feet, and these guys don't know how to run a game, and I do, which is kind of sweet in its way. You know, we've all been that guy, and but it's full of crazy energy, and it brims full of ideas. Some of those ideas might be a bit too party-killy for, you know, how you want to run things these days. However, it does kind of keep a certain danger level to the whole thing, to know that there's, you know, these wacky things out there. It's an important part of role-playing history, I think. I kind of regret that this didn't get here back in the early 70s when I was, well, you know, 77s when I was first sort of playing. Because 15, 16, 17-year-olds would have loved this, just loved this. And it, again, it's a thing that the crazy 17-year-old in us will still love. It's an important part of history. If you were a role-playing game historian, get onto the Emperor's Choice and get this for the history's sake. And if you are an old school player who likes running traditional sort of earlier versions of Dungeons and Dragons, the monsters and things convert over very easily. If you were kind of looking at doing sort of some more 5th eddy sort of things and whatever, you can get the Arduin Eternal, but you might be interested in just getting hold of the bestiary, because the bestiary has some really cool monster ideas and so on that you can slide into your regular D&D and use this to create a more Arduin world. But you might want to get the whole of Arduin Eternal and maybe have a look at putting some of those character classes and races in there as options for people to take. The world is up there. It's well worth looking at because it is chronicled in absolute insane levels of actually they put in the pubs, they put in, you know, the favorite stopping places. There are characters galore. who were obviously kind of beloved figures in the Skies original campaigns. They're all actually preserved there. So as a piece of world building, it's an interesting chunk of role-playing history, but it does give you kind of more of a workable world than most of these world settings you'll find. It's not like a map of a city and a map of a glorious place and ancient history of 3,000 years ago. This is what happened, and no. This tells you when you go down this road you find these people. This jungle is viewed with terror for these reasons. In this area, these guys are going to try and rip you off. It actually gives you a working environment to play in. So, I have never run Arduin. I have never played Arduin. I enjoyed what I read here. I'm very glad I got hold of it. And if you were really looking at throwing some surprises at your players, consider it. Consider giving them a run through Arduin Grimoire and scare the living daylights out of everybody. All right? Get hold of it. Cheers.